Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Thursday, January 14th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 231 days. The game against Michigan in 317 days. We're going to have to do it to you. We're going to have to mention it one more time. Ohio State did lose the national championship game to Alabama on Monday night, 52-24. This is not the first time, however, that Ohio State has lost a national championship game in a pretty lopsided fashion. It happened in 2006. The Buckeyes were actually favored that year and lost to Florida 41-14. My guest today is Kirk Barton. I'm sure he's thrilled to be talking about that game yet again. He was a part of that 2006 team. And Kirk, first of all, thank you for agreeing to come on, even after I told you what I wanted to talk about.
Oh, dude, Tom, you're the best, man. It's like we have our resident expert in losing national championship games in Kirk Barton. He's lost 2 of them. So if you need a guy to talk to about the bounce back and the feelings after, he's like, there's nobody better than Kirk. And he just so happens to be a coworker of mine.
Worked out perfectly. Yeah. Now, to me, there were some pretty eerie similarities Monday night to that Florida game. I mean, as soon as Trey Sermon goes down on that first carry, it was like, oh, I've seen this movie before. Because, of course, in the 2006 national championship game, Ted Ginn goes down with that broken leg, broken foot in after that opening kickoff return. How big was Ted Ginn in that game plan that day in Glendale? And what was it like on the sideline when he went down? Did guys realize, like, this is a big problem?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was, we lost John Kerr before the game even started, which is kind of like losing a Tommy Togiai. John Kerr played a lot of linebacker for us. So that kind of screwed up our linebacker rotation. Ted Ginn was the focal point of our offense. Like, Troy Smith won the Heisman, but Ted was the highest drafted guy on our entire team. So losing him right off the jump hurt. I mean, if you watch him in that 06 Michigan game, he was probably the best player on the field, him or Troy. And he's an X factor. He's a guy that played 14 years in the NFL. You can't just kind of luck your way into that. You have to be really good at what you do. And he was always a big factor. I mean, he keeps the box nice and clear. There's a reason why the Raiders took Henry Ruggs as the number 1 receiver, is because he ran a 4.2. It's like those guys that run 4.2. I mean, they take the top off the defense, and you just can't overhang safeties when you don't have, when you have Ted Ginn on the field, because he'll run past pretty much anybody. So that hurt. I mean, so when I saw Trey go, first we lose Tommy Togiai, which is our best player on defense, and I'm like, there's one. And then we lose Trey, and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, really? I was like, it was hard because I was sitting up in the press box and I couldn't see what had happened, or, so I'm kind of getting it on Twitter, like Trey Sermon in the locker room, grabbing his collarbone, and rewatched the game on TV. And I saw right after the first hit, like he goes out for a little pass pattern with the one that they deflected. And while he's in his route, he's grabbing it. And I'm like, yeah, that's not good. That don't look real fluid when you're grabbing at your collarbone or shoulder or whatever it was, or stinger. But it was, it stunk, man. I mean, that kid was, he was the focal point of my pregame prediction. I was like, he's going to run into history like Ezekiel and keep the ball away from their offense, and he's been so good, and then he's gone. So it stunk. I felt for the team.
Now, when Ginn went down in that game in Glendale, did the guys on the sidelines kind of realize, like, this is a really big problem. This is really going to change what we have to do. This is going to take away what we want to do? Or was it, you always hear next man up. When you lose someone of that caliber who maybe the game plan is kind of built around, is it really just, next man up, or do you kind of go like, this might be a problem?
Well, the weird thing, like I told you before we started recording, is I didn't even realize he was hurt until like probably the middle of the first or second quarter when we had a TV timeout. And I was like, why isn't Ted playing? Like, he wasn't in the huddle. Like, he didn't have his chin strap on. Like, I was like, gloves weren't on. I was like, what? I was like, what's going on? Like, I had no idea that he'd broken his leg. Because when you're like an offensive line, you just kind of, you sit on the bench and you're getting ready for your next series and you're talking, what are you seeing? And, but I just think that, watching Florida's offense, it was eerily similar to watching Alabama on Monday, how every second down was like 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3. I mean, just every single first down, they're getting 7 or 15 or whatever. So we never could get on schedule. It was never like 2nd and 9. It was always like a chunk, because that offense at the time really hadn't been seen, that spread offense where they were real horizontal, and we never defended anything like that. So, and it looked like it. So, all that plus, Teddy not being in, it was just kind of stunning, because we got off to such a great start. But we were still like, this doesn't mean anything. It's still 0-0. Like, don't act like we've arrived because we scored a touchdown. And then he breaks his leg, and it was strange to say the least.
Now, in that game, Jim Tressel was a little more aggressive than he normally would have been. Once he sort of saw how things were playing out with the defense not being able to get a lot of stops, kind of fell behind. Right before halftime, he tried to go for it on 4th and 1, maybe at his own 25, 30, something like that. And Beanie Wells got tripped up before he got back to the line. That was really uncharacteristic. Now, Ryan Day, on the other hand, is getting criticized for being maybe a little bit too conservative towards the end of the first half. When you have a coach who's normally kind of conservative being more aggressive like that, like Tressel was, going for it on 4th and 1, I mean, that's like statistically still the right play, but you never see coaches do it, and you especially never saw Jim Tressel do it. When you see a coach being aggressive like that, is that something that gets the guys fired up? Like, yeah, we're really trying to win the game? Or is that like, he sees something as very wrong and very bad, and this is actually a really bad thing?
I think he's trying to win the game. I think he trusts us enough to get a yard. And, the front side of the play, we executed, like I told you, before we went on, like I crushed 3 technique. Like, I mean, and as soon as I hit him flush and put him on his back, like a legit pancake. And you can watch it's on YouTube. You can watch it. And they brought the trainers out because we hit him so hard. And I hit him, and I was like, oh, we got a yard easy, just because of the crease in that part of the defense. I was like, all Beanie has to do is literally fall on top of our backs, and we didn't cut off the backside, which is generally an easier block, but it was just like kind of it's like one of those little things where, they say, well, if 10 guys do the thing right and one guy doesn't quite do his, get his assignment done, then that's how football is. And that was like one of those things where there's no reason we shouldn't have got a yard on that play. And I think that Tress was trying to kind of stem the tide, just because there was kind of basically a tidal wave of momentum going Florida's way. And we had to keep our defense off the field because we couldn't stop them. That was kind of like with this past Monday. It was like, do you really need to kick a field goal? Because we literally cannot stop these guys. We forced a fumble early. I know they punted a couple of times, but, it just felt like every time they had the ball, they're going to get 6. So, we had to take some chances there. And that was like the hard part about the end of the first half of the day, was when he's running the ball and they're calling timeout right away. And it's like, we're obviously going to try and score again. So, I mean, we might as well try and chuck it, because when you have Garrett Wilson and Olave, and, you might get a pass interference, you might be able to get a Hail Mary into the end zone, like just something, man. It's like, if by some miracle you score there, it's like getting the paddles out, to resuscitate the team, and that's kind of what we needed. But, he ran it 3 times, I think, because the team was so shell shocked and he was trying to get in the locker room. But Bama, like, they smelled the blood in the water, and they're calling timeouts trying to get another score on the board. So it was tough to watch. Like I said, I know a lot of this kids personally, and it was, and I've been there, I've lived it, and it sucks.
Yeah, and that one, in the aftermath of that one, what was the flight back to Columbus like? What was it like inside the walls of the Woody Hayes that next week or two? Yeah. And I mean, there's a famous story about Jim Tressel changing the door code to the Woody Hayes in the wake of that loss. So you can share that, and also just kind of what's the mood inside the program after a game like that?
I think it was probably different for us because we were favored. We were the 1 seed. We'd had unbelievable success in the Fiesta Bowl. We'd beaten the Hurricanes, which was huge. We beat Kansas State. We beat Notre Dame. And we got into like this little rut where we decided to wear white jerseys because that's what we wore in all the other games. Even though we were the 1 seed, we could have worn scarlet jerseys. We stayed in the same hotel, kind of had like the same routine, and it was like it was like one of those things where, I think there's some superstition. I think there's something to that, but it's almost like I wish you had to break all the routines and don't fall into the trap of, oh, well, if we do this and we eat here 2 days before the game, and then it's just going to majestically work like the other 3 bowl game wins that we had. And I think that's why people were so stunned, because people called like Tempe, it was like, Ohio, it was like Columbus West. That's why they were so stunned by it. But, after the game, people haven't lived until they've lost a national championship in a non-COVID era, because the reporters are allowed to write in the locker room. And it's not like that in a normal game. That's like an NFL thing where it's like, Tress gives his little speech, and then 20 minutes later, you don't realize this, but all the reporters were on the locker room, and like you're sitting there and like you're showering, and it's just weird because like and people are right on you with the mics and what happened, what went wrong, and you're just like you're still just kind of stunned, but you just got to stand there and be a man and take it, and answer the questions. Like I mean, I have a lot of props honestly for Shaun Wade. He went up and did media. He didn't have to. Justin Fields did media, because I always tell the media guys, I was like, look, I didn't run when we lost those. I was there when we beat Michigan. I was there when we lost to Florida. I didn't run. And I think that, media guys respect that, because if I would have ran, after, playing poorly, against Florida or LSU or whatever, then that's not, I think that's unbecoming. But Tress did change the code in the locker room, 41-14. It was like 41-14-07 or something. So it's like 6 digits. And, that was an easy way to remind us, because, he'd never been blown out like that. We had never been blown out like that. Like, we had a bad loss at Iowa in 04, but since then we were really good. We played a good Texas team, almost beat them. We played a good Penn State team, should have beat them, and we won every other game. So it was just really, it was strange, and it was harder for me because I knew that a lot of the guys that I had played with, like Troy Smith was gone, Ted Ginn's going pro, Anthony Gonzalez going pro, Antonio Pittman's going pro. Like, so a lot of the guys that I had played with and were my best friends were all gone. So I was like the guy that stayed, because I did my paperwork and I got a 4th round grade, and I was like, I'll stay for another year. So but all of my homies were like gone. It was kind of weird. So, but you just got to pick up the pieces and just do what you can, because it's hard, because everyone is going to want to know what happened in that game. But that's what gets annoying when you're a player.
Now, you mentioned the guys all leaving for the NFL after that game.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them had exhausted their eligibility. I think there were guys who did leave early.
Yep.
Does a loss like that make you want to come back and avenge the loss, or does that make it like, man, we just spent all this time and it wasn't even close? Or does that not factor into those decisions at all, and it's just, you're looking at your draft grade and that's kind of the bottom line?
I think the situations are all kind of individualized, because for Teddy was going to leave regardless, just because he was so good. But I think for Gonzo, part of it was that Troy was going to be gone. Troy is Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and we really, we had Todd potentially as quarterback, or Rob showing off, which was a significant drop off from Troy. So when you're Gonzo and you need that guy to feed you like Troy did, I mean it's hard to come back and have a lesser quarterback, because he was kind of at the peak of his grade. He went 1st round, so he made a great decision coming out. Pitt had Beanie behind him, and he was probably going to split carries at best. And running backs tend to go after 3 years anyways, if they're any good at Ohio State, just because you don't want to get more more wear on the tires, I guess you could say. But I don't know. I talked to Anthony after the game immediately, and I was like, does this change anything? And he's like, if there's ever anything that would make me change my mind, it was this. So I had like a tiny glimmer of hope, but then I was just like, yes. Once guys have their mind made up to leave, I usually, in my opinion, I think it's better that they do leave, because there's nothing worse than when a kid kind of had his mind set to leave and then he comes back and then he's a cancer. I mean, I've seen that before too. Guys that were like, "Oh, I'm out," and then all of a sudden they come back and, "Oh, I could have been a 2nd round pick, or I could have been a 1st round pick if I would have left," and then they don't play as well. They're just not. It's better if a guy wants to leave that they just leave. And I'm happy for him. I'm glad for him. But it's better for the morale of the team. And if a kid doesn't play well, or he doesn't get the reps he wants, or he doesn't get the whatever, then they can be completely cancerous to the locker room.
Now, in terms of the rest of the year, once you get the guys who make their NFL decisions, you start moving into spring ball, all that stuff, winter workouts. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the 2005 season. It was 2 close losses, one to Texas, one to Penn State. And then 2006, undefeated all the way through, and then just an absolute blowout at the end of the year, loss to Florida. Yeah. Which one of those, is that like a different form of motivation, a different feel to the motivation coming into the next year, where it's like, like last year's Ohio State team missed by just, the tiniest little fraction of beating Clemson and going to play for the national championship. This year, they beat Clemson, but then they get to Alabama, and it was like, it was pretty decisive at the end. Is there a difference to the feel inside the program, or the amount of motivation you can pull from those, the different types of losses?
Oh, absolutely. It's literally like a complete 180, because when you lose, like how they lost to Clemson, it's like, oh, well, John Wade got ejected, J.K. Dobbins got hurt, like we were this close, you're still on to start. That's one thing, because you're going to get a lot of like the sympathy, the what if. But when you just get speedboated like we did by Bama and they beat us by 28 points, the Florida game was probably worse just because we were favored and everything, but that was a higher margin of victory for Bama, which, either way, it sucks to lose. But when you're in a championship and you lose by 4 touchdowns, it's brutal, because, everywhere these kids go, people want to know what happened, and there's people that spent a lot of money to go down there. There's people that spent, $2,000 a ticket, $5,000 a ticket. They bought suites in Miami. They rented private jets. There's people that gamble and lose a ton of money on these games. So sometimes, like, when you get kind of the vile energy and the vitriol, you don't realize what it's from. Now that I'm older, I realize that, that Florida game was like the most expensive ticket ever. People were renting jets, houses, dropping 10, 20, 30 grand on the trip. And then we go out and just get destroyed. And, that's, you feel the what happened. I spent all this money, and, I spent my kids' college fund to buy tickets. And I'm like, well, I apologize. Like, I didn't plan on getting broken in half on the first play, but things happen. It's a sporting event. It's not a movie. It's not a play. Like, you never know the result of a sporting event. And, I think that the motivation, it's a weird thing right now, because these kids just got so close. Their dream is to win a national championship. It's every kid's dream. You want to get the big ring. You're a national champion for life. You get all the trimmings of that, the trappings, and it didn't happen. And you got embarrassed on the big stage, which is tough. And now these kids, they're going to take, a week or two just to freshen the bodies up and see their families and whatever. But, you got to get back to it. And that's like the hard part, is like, you got to get back on the treadmill. You got to get back in the squat rack. You got to find the motivation, even if it's artificial, even if it's the last thing in the world you want to do, just because, you're depressed, you're in the gutter, people are kind of all over you on Twitter or whatever. You got to tune that out and get back to work. Because, I had to become a captain, and I was never a vocal guy just because I had Troy Smith. I had great leaders, Nick Mangold. But all of a sudden, like, I was the guy that had to talk, because, I had a new quarterback in Todd Beckman, who was my age, but he was a year behind me because he gray shirted. And the rest of our offense was like brand new. It was all new. It was Hartline and Rabisky and Beanie Wells and, guys that were all younger. So I was the only old guy left that started in 04 and 05. And so I had to become the vocal guy, which was never my thing. But sometimes you got to do something you don't want to do, which is, yell at people and people accountable. And because if you don't do it, then no one's going to do it. Like, you got to have leadership, especially when you're coming off a beat down like that, and nobody has high expectations for you, because we were picked to be third in the Big Ten that year. Like, Michigan was, number 1 and preseason number 2. And we were like, top 15, I think. And, we ended up going back to the championship with a team that frankly overachieved. Like, we weren't very good. On the offensive line, I was the only guy that got drafted on the O-line. We played LSU and lost by 14 there, but, I felt like we overachieved that year, which is, a lot of it is just because of just hardcore leadership and holding people accountable. And because we weren't as talented. We weren't as talented as in 06 or even 05. We weren't even close as talented, but, you just got to hold people accountable. You got to, really grind and kind of claw your way back up through hell, essentially. Because, like, living in Columbus right now after a loss like this, when you're a player, it is hell. It sucks. These guys are everywhere they go. People want to know what happened. How's it going to get fixed? Who's getting fired? Why is Kerry Combs the D coordinator? Like, and stuff like, you don't want to answer that. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm a player. Like, but it's an interesting time. But these kids got to keep their heads, man. I'm telling you. And they sacrificed so much. They're cooped up for 6 months essentially, and they got this close. And it's like, you don't get those opportunities in life, man. You never get that shot again. And the kids that have eligibility, thankfully, do. But it's going to be interesting to see who comes back and tries to go after it again.
I think my major takeaway there is, friends, don't bother the players. Leave the players alone. They've got plenty. Plenty on their plates.
But people can't help it. I mean, everybody wants to know. I mean, people have been blowing me up asking, and I'm just like, it's one of those things where I'm thankful that I'm media and I'm not a coach anymore. I'm not a player anymore, because I don't. We have inside information, but it's not like I'm a coach. Like, I don't say, well, this is what our design was to let Devontae Smith run free and stop everybody else, and it worked perfect then. It's like, I don't know, but it's just tough, because I mean, people are naturally curious, and they always think that you have some sort of magical answer that they haven't heard. I mean, it's been 15 years since the Florida game, and people still want to know what happened. Like, did an alien kidnap Troy Smith and replace him with a near immortal or something? It's like, they always think that you're going to have some magical answer that nobody's heard. And I'm just like, guys, they just beat us. They're better than we were. We had everything. I call it a Murphy's Law game. Like, Monday was a Murphy's Law game. Like, when your best player on offense, your hottest player, breaks his collarbone or gets a stinger in the first play, it's like the Murphy's Law game. You turn the ball over, you don't convert in the red zone, kick a field goal. You lose Tommy Togiai before the game even starts. Bama had no COVID losses magically, because it doesn't exist in Bama like it does in Ohio. Then you lose Wyatt. Wyatt blows his knee again. I mean, it's one of those games. I mean, it sucks that it has to happen on the big stage, but it happened. And this is a real test of the leadership of the program from Ryan Day down. It's easy to beat Indiana and Northwestern, but when you come off of a national championship loss, this is like a real test of your mettle.
Well, this is shaping up to be an absolutely fascinating offseason. It starts with guys declaring for the NFL or deciding to return. We'll head into winter workouts pretty soon. The true freshmen are arriving. Their classes start on January 22nd. We'll roll into spring ball pretty soon, and then another season of Ohio State football, which hopefully will have some more fans in the stands and a little bit more of a normal schedule. It doesn't feel like it, but it is right around the corner once again. So, Kirk, thank you for joining us, and thank you guys for listening. Make sure you check out all of our great podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. You can subscribe right there. Also, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Also, we mentioned those NFL draft declarations. We had some really interesting information on our Ask the Insiders board on guys who may be coming back, might not be coming back, where people may be leaning right now. Might be, I know the season just ended. The season never stops at BuckeyeScoop.com. So consider becoming a member there. Sign up for an annual membership. It'll get you all the way through the end of next season. So you get a nice discounted rate there as well if you sign up for an annual membership. So lots of great information there. We have had a blast this season. It was our first season. It was a weird one. It was a memorable one, but it was an awesome one at Buckeye Scoop. Hope you guys will consider becoming a member there as well. So thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.